And we are live. It's Dr. J in the house with Evan Brand. Today we're going to be talking about hidden histamine, the real reasons behind your mysterious symptoms. We're going to be diving into this topic today. We're going to be connecting the dots to all the different functional medicine principles and looking at root causes across the board. Evan, how are we doing, my man?
Hey, I'm doing good. I told you before we hit record that in the last 5 years, there's been an exponential increase in histamine issues. We know that the virus did it. We know the injections are driving a lot of this. Most
Mm-hmm.
people had not heard the term mast cell activation 5 to 10 years ago. Mast cell
Yep.
activation was just not talked about. And now there's a lot of people waking up to mast cell activation. On my podcast, I've interviewed Dr. Tanya Dempsey. She's like one of the world leading MDs that talks about mast cell issues. And I chatted with her about it. And one cool thing that people don't know is that probiotics can actually shift the microbiome in a way to lower your baseline histamine levels. So we're going to get into some of the root causes of why you have histamine issues, but right out of the gate, the microbiome is a big piece of the puzzle, and it's where things are, you either make it or break it, so to speak, with your gut health, and that determines whether or not you're going to react to certain foods. Like right here, I've got a kombucha, which years ago, if I would drink this kombucha, I would have a histamine reaction to it. Now I can drink it and I feel fine.
100%. And again, when it comes to histamine, right, I look at histamine sensitivity and or probiotic sensitivity as a sign of something deeper. Now, histamine is a concern, but in my opinion, it's more of a marker, not necessarily the root cause. And so, for instance, the more inflamed you are, the more, let's say, your immune system is out of balance, right? And the more sensitive your body and your immune system will be. And so I look at histamine sensitivity as a sign of inflammation sensitivity, more immune sensitive, and potentially more gut permeable. And I also think of the toxicity bucket may be higher. And so the big three toxins that I see that increase histamine the most are going to be number one, exogenous mold from the environment coming in. Two, endogenous mold, where your gut's fermenting mold and creating that. Three is going to be bacteria toxins, whether it's SIBO and methane and hydrogen and the various bacteria producing histamine in the gut. So there's different histamine producing bacteria, whether it's Klebsiella, Citrobacter, Pseudomonas, Morganella. And then, of course, you could add candida or yeast into that. And kind of yeast and colonized mold kind of overlap there. But those are going to be my biggest three things. And then, of course, we could throw in other types of toxins because let's say we're eating gluten or foods that we have a lot of allergenicity to, right? Your basophils essentially are a type of white blood cell in the blood. When those basophils go out of the blood into the tissue, they now become mast cells, and mast cells are notorious for producing histamine. So the more overactive your immune system is, and the more you're interacting with different foods, especially the more common food allergens, that's going to be a big source of histamine stimulation.
Yeah, well said. And this is why people feel better if they do fasting. Many people will say, "Hey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
intermittent fasting because as soon as I eat, my symptoms flare back up." And I would argue it's not the food that's the problem. I did a video last night on my Instagram page. If you guys aren't there, check it out. Evan Brand on Instagram, coming up on 160,000 followers there, which is cool because that means these lab strategies and these functional medicine topics are getting to more people. And the video I did was showing common staples in people's conventional American or even a paleo template that can flare up your histamine. So this could be tomatoes, apple cider vinegar, kombucha, soy sauce, beef sticks, beef jerky, dried
Yep.
fruits, strawberries. These are all things that
Correct.
are they're delicious. And it's not that the tomato sauce is not the problem. Like if you're going to do like a homemade chili, maybe some tomato based sauce, it's probably okay. But if you're reacting, meaning you're getting skin flushing, you're getting anxiety, you're getting a rash on your cheeks. That was my thing. I used to eat avocado and I'd get this weird rash by my eye. It could be headaches. It could be heart palpitations. It could be itching, your typical histamine symptom of itchiness. It could be a postnasal drip, so some kind of a runny nose. These symptoms, especially after you eat, let's say within the first 20 to 60 minutes after you eat, that's a clue. And the real test is if you take a DAO supplement, which is the enzyme that breaks down histamine naturally, it degrades the histamine, it eats it up like a little Pac-Man. If you take a DAO supplement before the meal and you don't have the runny nose, you don't have the anxiety, you don't have the heart palpitation, that's a good clue that we're barking up the right tree. And this is a histamine issue. And it's something we have to fix internally, as you referenced mold, candida, bacteria. So let's chat about the labs, because your average person goes to the allergist, they get put on an H1, H2 blocker, or maybe they don't even get put on a prescription. Maybe it's just the over the counter Claritin or the Benadryl, and then they get stuck on those. Let's chat about what labs should people be looking at to investigate histamine problems, because your allergist might just do what, a prick test or something, and that's just not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, you got your serum tryptase in the blood, which is one, and then you have your like N-methylhistamine, which is like a 24-hour urine one. Again, those can give you a good window of in regards to how high your histamine is. Personally, I don't do any of those tests. What I do is I just look at what I do. I utilize what's called a histamine challenge. So I either see how patients in their history respond to fermented foods, right? Especially probiotic rich foods. How do they feel? What happens to their skin? Do they get brain foggy? Do they get headaches? Do they get bloated or gassy? How do they do with higher histamine foods, especially healthier paleo versions? We're talking citrus, we're talking grass fed, pasture fed, bacon, we're talking those kind of foods. If I see any sensitivity within those just simple foods that are quote unquote healthy, then I know there's a histamine issue. And then I'm also looking at, do we have environmental symptoms like chronic congestion, chronic allergies? Those kind of things are the easiest first thing for me to say there is a histamine issue. Now, the easiest thing I do is just get the environment healthier. Get a really good air filter. It's HEPA, an activated charcoal base, to get the histamine from a lot of the environmental chemicals, dust, molds in the environment, because those things come in and they trigger a histamine release from the immune system. So no, they're not histamine itself, but they're triggering a release. So if we can get that, the environment cleaner, that lowers histamine. Your sinus cavity holds it, it harbors it because it's moist, it's dark, and it can grow. So you flush out your sinus cavity with saline, maybe a little bit of iodine or silver in there, some X-Clear spray pre and post, and that can get the residual residue down. So if we can get the environment clean, we can get the residual junk in your sinus cavity clean, and then also making sure relative humidity is below 50%. This time of year, right, November, most places are going to be pretty dry. It's not an issue, but as we get into the summer months, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Years ago, when I was super sick, it was the same summer that I had 3 tick bites and got mold exposure. I remember going to a bookstore and my face just starting to get red and splotchy and itchy, and I had brain fog, and I'm like, wow, that was one of the times that sticks out to me as, wow, environment can literally shape your brain chemistry. And we know that these inhaled mold toxins, in particular ochre toxin produced by aspergillus, the most common mold in a water damaged building, we know ochre toxin directly affects dopamine. Check out our podcast we did on neurotransmitters for the deep dive on that. But the long story short is
Correct.
the environment can be directly reducing your brain chemistry. So if you're in an office space and all of a sudden by
Mm-hmm.
lunch you feel completely zapped, your energy's down, your mood is down, you can't focus, it could be
Correct.
some level of environmental exposure. And what I do too is I burn candles. So I light this bad boy a couple times a week. I burn it for 2 to 3 hours. Lime, lemon, grapefruit, tangerine oil. Is it a cure all? No. Like, some people email in like, "Oh, I still have mold." It's like, yeah, you got to like get into the walls or your ducts. Like a candle or even the fog machine we talk about. It's not a magic cure, but it's something to help take off the load of your immune system. I had a lady in London years ago. She had no budget to do anything but burn some candles, and it was enough to help her histamine issues calm down. So I can't like sign in blood, you know, do some botanicals in the environment and get an air filter, and you're going to be able to eat whatever the heck you want. But I do want to get into the labs. I'm going to circle back to that. Let's get to the labs.
How about even using some ozone? Would you say even a little ozone generator in there?
Man, if you're not in there, like if you set it and then you leave, you know, maybe. But ozone, I get brain fog even from a small amount of
Yes.
ozone.
Me too. I think if you did it and you let it sit for like an hour and you just got a fan in there and you flushed it out. But I agree. The botanicals are a little bit more gentle and you can get back in. I don't get any. The only thing is I get a slight irritation with my eyes for like maybe an hour. But I just
Okay.
did some fogging just last week and I'm pretty safe in there. But I agree. I ozone out my car just to make sure it was nice and clean
A
smelling.
car for sure.
And
Yeah, I would agree on the car because you're not in there and you could run the air conditioner and just
run it
run the
through.
heater. Yeah.
But I went in to hold my breath to kind of like put the windows down and up and all that. And it gave
Yeah.
me a little bit of brain fog for an hour. So I do agree. It's a little bit noxious, but I think if you had a mask and you could just flush it out, I think it'd be okay. But yeah, the candles are good. And also, there are other molds that aren't mycotoxin based. Like you can just have molds because the outside environment has got all this decaying plant matter and you leave your windows open and it comes into your home. I've done plate tests where we see tons of cladosporium, microsporium, things that are not associated with mycotoxins and water damage in the home.
Yeah.
And so that can be a big thing. And so you can get that out. And again, flushing your sinus cavity out can be a big deal because it's the perfect petri dish to grow the outside inside.
Pull up this oat test for me. Let's go
Yeah.
through some of the
Same.
labs and talk about. And this is stuff. Just by the way, we cover this a lot. I know you all, if you've listened to the show for a while, you know this, that your conventional doctor is not going to run this. But for new listeners, we just want to call this out. That look, your allergist, your GP, your gastro, your
Mhm.
neurologist, even, they're not going to connect the dots between the environment. Like, I don't think any neurologist, except maybe a couple out there in the functional space, are saying, hey, let's test organic acids to see if you have mold colonization. So this girl here, what you're seeing is very high aspergillus. I mean, these markers are off the chart. And this is an at-home urine test. So if you're like, what are we looking at? You're looking at an at-home urine test result, and these levels are off the chart, indicating this woman either currently lived in or previously lived in a water damaged building, or maybe it was a moldy car, moldy office, whatever. We don't know, but she's having a ton of symptoms. And so this one page of this test, I mean, this test goes on 10 more pages. This one page could change your whole life, because if we can get the data, we can make a protocol to fix this.
And so let's just kind of break that down. So the markers, let's say the 5-hydroxy methyl 2-feroic that has the little parentheses aspergillus, the number 4 parentheses aspergillus, the 5 and the 6, those are all markers of colonized mold, right? So what does that mean? Does that mean the mold from the outer environment is now in the gut and is colonized and you're like a little mold factory?
That's right. Yeah, that's what the labs tell us. They say you can either be a mold factory, a mold reservoir, or both. So if you had a mycotoxin test that showed ochratoxin, yeah, you're storing that mold toxin. And some people aren't colonized, meaning the aspergillus is negative. They just have the mold fart in them, but not the active mold. In this case, she has both.
Because I've seen patients where anytime I see colonized mold on here, like 2, 4, 5, 6, or 9, we're running specific mold plate tests to see if it's in the environment. Now,
And look at this
sometimes a
dysbiosis.
lot of times I see that's crazy. That's like off the chart side. That's like a 10x above the high end range. But I'll test sometimes some of the plates and we won't see any mold, excess mold in the environment. So if that's the case and the environment looks pretty good, and let's say we still going to get some HEPA filtration going and clean the environment up, I would say that it's more just a reservoir of previous gut diet issues where it's hanging out, but it may not be an environmental input from, let's say, mold in the environment. Would you agree?
Yeah, I tell people it's probably a previous exposure. If you don't mind, pull that back up. I just want to point
Yes.
this out, because we're trying to make the connection here between histamine, your environment, your diet, your brain chemistry, your emotional health. And so if you're someone listening, if you have anxiety, if you have heart palpitations, if you feel kind of revved up, kind of racy for no reason, you feel like you have trouble getting motivated, you're not making your bed, you got clutter in your garage so much so you can't park your car in it. Well, you need to look into this here, because as you can see, all these neurotransmitters are showing up low, and we know there's a direct impact from the mold on the brain. So this woman was struggling a lot. She was really, really behind in work and life and just couldn't get things done. And this is when people go to alcohol or something like that to self-medicate, because alcohol will temporarily boost all these. It's kind of fascinating. I don't know if you've ever looked into that, but the the neurotransmitter effects of alcohol, it's pretty amazing, because alcohol boosts serotonin, but it also boosts endorphins and dopamine.
Hmm.
Whereas something like an SSRI is only going to modulate serotonin, alcohol modulates all neurotransmitters. So I see why people would be, quote, driven to drink if they look like that on paper. This lady was having like 3, 4 glasses of wine a day, and her brain chemistry is so low. And as we saw on page one, her dysbiosis is through the roof too. So that's where you get not only uh, the histamine and the dopamine impact from the mold, but now you have all this dysbiosis in the gut producing histamine. This is a person who ends up on a carnivore diet because they think that if they just eat meat, they're going to cure their problems, and you won't.
Yeah, and again, alcohol is going to be, it's a downer, it's a barbiturate, so it's going to relax and depress the nervous system, right? And so most people, they're in that sympathetic tone, they're fight or flight, they're going, and so alcohol kind of helps decrease that. Now, I always tell patients there's constructive and there's destructive vehicles. A glass of wine every now and then, good quality, not a big deal. But in the end, when you're stressed, what's the go to? You don't want to be going to alcohol all the time. What are the go tos? You want to go to magnesium, you want to go to theanine, you want to go to GABA. Those are natural central nervous system relaxers. We can even go to certain herbs as well. We can go to holy basil, we can go to ashwagandha, we can go to shisandra, we can go to different um, herbs or medicinal mushrooms to relax the nervous system. My priority is always going to be amino acids and minerals first. So that's where I'm going to go to my magnesium, my theanine to help with GABA, maybe additional GABA. We may also add in, especially if we have circadian rhythm issues and low melatonin, we may be adding in 5-HTP and B6. These are all going to be important building blocks to help the brain relax. If someone's gut impaired, we may even be doing an Epsom salt foot soak, which is magnesium sulfate, 1 to 2 cups in hot water, enough to cover your feet. Soak your feet till they start to get cold, pull them out, done. That bypasses the gut. And that way, also, if you're sensitive and you're having loose stools, it can also bypass that too. So it makes it a little bit more gentle and easy to get it in your system. The more depleted you are, you can go from a foot bath to a full bath, but at least a foot bath is pretty easy to do.
Yeah. And it's a little bit of a societal issue of alcohol, how socially acceptable it is. You go to happy hour, hey, what can I get you? We got margaritas. It's like, no, I'll just take the chicken wings. And so it's hard to push away alcohol for some people because it's so in your face, it's so socially acceptable. But the reality is, it's going to double mess up your histamine issues and make it even worse because alcohol depletes DAO, which breaks down histamine. And drinking alcohol is pretty much like liquid histamine. I mean, I can feel it. I mean, you ever feel the heat from tequila going down your throat or in your tummy? I mean, you can get a histamine reaction pretty quick, which is why a lot of alcoholics, you'll see them flushed. I mean, they're just constantly battling this histamine degradation of DAO. So
Well, you
yes,
see it with Asians too. Asians are notorious because they miss the enzyme to properly metabolize acetaldehyde.
yeah.
And so what happens is they will typically take the Pepsid AC, which is an H1 blocker, histamine blocker, right? Pepsid AC is an H1, which normally lowers stomach acid, but you can also use it to lower the histamine produced from alcohol.
Yeah, Native Americans too, right? They couldn't tolerate
Yep,
alcohol at all.
correct. So that's a big thing. And
So
anytime
chime
someone's
in the comments. If you're Asian, if you're Native American, chime in. Let us know if you've had alcohol. I love learning about this stuff because you'll see certain cultures that can just drink their weight in alcohol, and that's not me. I don't typically mess with it.
Yeah, and if you're going to drink more than like 1 or 2 drinks, I just recommend bring some NaC and some activated charcoal with you, and drink a mineral water either in between your drinks. Get like a Topo Chico or a Perrier, something that's a good mineral water. So you do 1 drink, 1 to 2 drinks, then have a mineral water. 1 to 2 drinks, have a mineral water. Squeeze a lime or a lemon in there, get a little bit extra vitamin C, or bring some, bring your electrolyte support, bring an activated charcoal, and bring a NAC. Those are great. Great
Yeah.
way to bind up the histamine, support detoxification, get your body to clear out. Because if the acetaldehyde's the problem, right? And if you can get that cleared out, it's helpful. And plus, what happens is your blood sugar gets dysregulated. So the more your liver is dealing with the alcohol, the blood sugar actually drops because it's not processing the carbohydrate. So your blood sugar is actually dropping when you consume alcohol. And restaurants use that because that drop in blood sugar causes cravings and it causes you to overeat, order more sweets, order more junk. Everyone has that time back in college where you drank a bunch and then you went and got pizza afterwards, right? Because of that blood sugar appetite loop. So the more you can kind of clean that up and ideally don't eat or don't drink on an empty stomach. Have some good protein in your stomach before you drink. That's much better. Stabilize that blood sugar drop.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Let's get into some of the
And the charcoal,
botanicals.
the charcoals will bind up the histamine. So if you are sensitive, you're going to get some binding of that histamine with some of the charcoal, with some of the bentonite clay and various pectins or fulvic minerals.
I love binders. And even if you're like,
Yep.
hey, I don't drink at all, that's fine. You still need binders because we all
Yeah.
have microplastics and forever chemicals and
Mm-hmm.
mycotoxins and all of that. So everyone
100%.
needs binders on this planet. When I interviewed Dr. Neil Nathan, he's like binders for life. He's like, everyone needs binders. And so
Well,
that's
my
that's that's
favorite
my
one is
stand.
NaC. NaC is a weak binder for heavy metals too. It's going to gently bind it, which is great. I mean, I like it because you don't want super strong binders with your food all the time because then you're binding up a lot of minerals. So having some gentle, weak binders in there that are nutrient based like NaC or vitamin C are great.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Cool.
let's get into the botanicals and some of the solutions. So we hit the environmental piece, getting that dialed in, air purification, botanical treatment. removing the
Correct.
mold, getting the humidity down. We hit the dysbiosis connection, the alcohol
Flushing out the
connection.
sinus cavity. Flushing out the
Yeah.
sinus cavity. That
So
can be great.
let's hit the herbs because I've been very very impressed with just my personal experience has just it's definitely humbled me. And Perea leaf and Guducci, which is called Tinospora,
Oh,
and
Neospora. Yep.
quercetin, like these herbal mast cell stabilizers have saved my life. Luteolin is another one, and I think I had things somewhat under control, and then I got hit with the Rona, and then it really
Hmm.
aggravated the mast cells and the histamine, and then I kind of
Yep.
went backwards for a little while. Went through some of the protocols for that, Schmeiber, and some things like that.
Yes.
I don't know
Yes.
if we're still banned of saying that word, but anyway, Dr. Pierre
Oh,
Corey.
but yeah. By the way, as of yesterday in Texas, that is now over the counter. You
That's
can
what I
buy it
heard.
without a prescription as of yesterday.
Thank God. I
So
mean, that's
I
just
gotta
it's
I gotta
silly.
go out and maybe stock up a little bit.
I would. I mean,
Yeah.
especially tell me what you discover on pricing because some of the online sites, it's around for 112 milligram pills, it's around two ish, 250. So let me know what you come up with on pricing because like Dr. Pierre Corey, I've done some interviews with him, the war on Schmeiber. So check out the episode I did with him on that subject. But those tools, so the quercetin, the Perea leaf, the luteolin, these are natural histamine and mast cell stabilizing compounds that help allow your body to not release excessive histamine. And then when you're using some of these long haul syndrome protocols as well, extra vitamin C, extra vitamin D, that also helps the mast cells to calm down. So if you're someone who's like, hey, I've never been the same since the virus, I've never been the same since the injection, it's not that, I mean, and in some cases it is. It's not always the single trigger. It's just that thing pissed off the immune system so much that the dormant Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella, mold, whatever other funk you had in you is now able to
Correct.
just rear its head because your immune system got dysregulated.
Yeah, I call it either the inflammation or histamine bucket, and most people already have that bucket kind of full. And so when you add in the Rona or something else, that bucket now is overflowing, right? And so my thing is, before you have symptoms, try to get that bucket a little bit more empty. That gives you more capacity to adapt to deal with stress. So
Yep.
just try to lower your bucket a little bit. That puts you in a much better place.
Yeah, and this is sometimes years in the making. So, just to set realistic timelines for people listening, I had a call yesterday with a woman who she's very impressed. She's a month into her protocol and she's like, I'm significantly better. I'm like, hooray, that's not typical. It's not typical to get 50% better in a month. I mean, we'd love to
No.
hit home runs every single month. That'd be amazing. But for me, it took years. I mean, I'm still battling some of the Lyme symptoms. Occasionally, depending on sleep quality. If sleep's dialed in, exercise, sunlight, all the things, I can live what I feel like is a good quality of life. But if I slip up, sleep starts crashing, kids, the whole thing, then I'll be like, uh-oh, got to hit the Lyme drops again. And then that flares up the histamine stuff. So it's not it's not an overnight fix and it probably didn't happen overnight. So I just want people to listen in and know that Dr. J and I talk about this a lot, this timeline. And we say in general, for every year that you've been sick, expect about a month of care to get better. So if you've been sick for 10 years, 10 months to get better is pretty dang fast.
Yeah, and it
But
also depends
most
to what
people are in
degree
good shape.
too. It also
Yeah.
depends to what degree. You bedridden for a year, or you just having some mild lingering symptoms, right? 'Cause those are two
Yeah.
different scenarios, right? Um, and just to highlight one thing, I wanted to make one component clear. Oh, also, so when you drink alcohol or certain things like that, that also depletes B vitamins, right? B1, B6, and B6 is a really important cofactor to make DAO, right? DAO is diamine oxidase. That's the enzyme that actually metabolizes and breaks down histamine. And so the more we have good B vitamins on board, good methylation, that's going to help with dealing with histamine support. And then also another another couple of things I wanted to highlight. Sometimes people that are slow cooking their food, they're like they have gut issues, they have chronic gut stuff, they have IBD, they have Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. They're using a crock pot, but sometimes that level of slow cooking can over accumulate histamine in the cooking process. And so what I recommend is an instant pot for people like that because it cooks it faster in 30 to 45 minutes. So you don't have a lot of the histamine accumulation that an 8 to 10 hour crock pot session would make. But also, you're still getting the benefits of pre-digesting the food and making it easier to digest. And some people, they have a lot of gut issues, a lot of bacterial overgrowth. They can't even tolerate any fiber. Sometimes they need a zero fiber, zero lectin and no plants at all. And some people are the extreme of that. So you have to have a lot of tools in your tool belt, because if you're just listening online of like, oh, I should just cut out bacon and just do this and it'll be enough, maybe not. This is where you need a good functional medicine practitioner like Evan or I that understands what tools to use and when to use them, right? There's people online that are dangerous because they're like the handyman that gets their first screwdriver, right? And all they want to do is use the screwdriver, right? I'm the vegan diet guy. I'm, the low FODMAP guy. And it's like, that's fine. When there's the screw, that's a flathead screw, and you have a flathead screwdriver, great, it works. But when you have different variations of what's happening, you want to grab the right tool in the tool belt for the job. So the more tools you have, you can apply it for the patient correctly. And that's what you get when you interact with someone like Evan or I, is we're applying the right tool for the job.
Yeah, and this is harder for us to market this idea to you all. It's very sexy on social media, as you mentioned, to be the FODMAP guy. And he gets all these followers that he amasses, and he teaches everyone that FODMAP is the secret, or celery juice is the secret, or fish oil is the secret, or vitamin D. You're the vitamin D guy, right? All he does is talk about vitamin D on every podcast he goes on. That's cool, but it's only
Correct.
one piece of the puzzle. What we're doing is more complex, but the reality is that's what it takes to get people better, because
Correct.
you're not going to ever get a silver bullet that fixes 100% of your issues. It's going to be 10% diet, 10% environmental, 10% histamine mast cell stabilizers, 10% long haul protocols, 10% watching out for alcoholic beverages or other high histamine beverages like kombucha temporarily, and getting rid of the collagen. I mean, collagen could be higher histamine. Bone broth. I had a lady yesterday, she emailed in. She's like, hey, my 18-month-old baby is completely covered in skin rashes, and I give him bone broth every day to heal his gut. I'm like, no, wait, like you got to lay off the bone broth right now. That's probably making things worse. So there's a right time and a place. But as you mentioned, it's people want to be a pillar because that's what you're taught as a marketer, to find your niche. So if you become, like, we won't call her out by name, but there's a lady who's like the bone broth lady,
Yes.
and that's all she does is just bone broth, bone broth. And it's like, trust me, I tried it and I couldn't tolerate bone broth for many years, and now I can. But if you tell someone who's mast cell activated to drink a bunch of bone broth every day, they're probably going to get worse.
Yeah, and it's okay to say, "Hey, I'm going to market this for certain people, but if it doesn't work for you, here's what it means and here's the next step." That's fine, but the problem is most people don't ever go to that level of detail to say, "Okay, if you had these issues and it didn't work for you, here's what could be next." I've seen other practitioners where this happened to them, and I said, "Well, how do you handle this person?" I say, "Well, they're probably not doing it right, or they're probably lying to me about what happened." I'm like, "Whoa, that's pretty." So in your brain, like, you've kind of come to the conclusion that it's impossible for anyone not to get a result from this protocol. I'm like, that's kind of dangerous thinking. And I've seen some practitioners that are that way. And my thinking is, if you have an issue, what does that mean? Do you have enough hydrochloric acid and enzymes in bile? Is there environmental histamine that we can lower? Is there excess glyphosate? Do we have issues going on with just not enough DAO? Will that be enough? Should we add some histamine to granulators? I want to look at, do we have to go to an extreme carnivore? Do we need to use an Instapot more, right? All those, are we pooping every day? Because we could be reabsorbing toxins from our stool. Are we passing 12 inches of stool a day? That could be, so you got to look at all the variables, right? It's really important.
And how about your partner? Okay, you fixed your own
Yeah.
gut for H. pylori, but your partner has reflux and all sorts of GERD diagnoses, and you're not treating your partner because they're stubborn and they think you're just on this health journey, and all they're doing is complaining about the bill for your lab test. But they're the one that's actually keeping you sick because they have an infection that's being passed between, or even the kids. So in many cases, we'll
Yeah.
see kids that have strep. Mom and dad have strep too. So is it more money to fix the whole family? Yes, but in some cases, it's the only way to heal, because we see this relapse happening
Yeah.
where while they're on the herbs, they feel great. They get off, husband reinfects them in most cases, how it works.
Yeah, so easy little trick, little clinical pearl here. Write it down. Is you can do some hydrogen peroxide, either a 3% or a 3% food grade, and you can rinse your mouth 15 to 30 seconds. Gargle with it. Tilt your head back. That will kill a lot of the strep and staph and H. pylori in the mouth. So then, if you're worried about passing different bacteria back, that hydrogen peroxide is a good oxidizer, and that can prevent at least a lot of the back and forth via kissing or sharing stuff. And so, twice a day, that can be super helpful to get the mouth clean.
Yeah, I'm sure the herbals were good too. There's one called Lumino that I like. It's like a clove oil based mouthwash. I think
Yep,
any of that's going
that's
to
good
help the
too.
oral
Yep.
microbiome.
And any of the xylitol ones are going to be great. Baking soda in it's going to be great because we know baking soda kills mold by crushing the crystalline structure of it. So we know any type of those things, and if you do a combination, you're going to be in great shape. But that's a big one. You have the wife who has these issues, the husband's resistant, and they're having intimacy and they're passing it back and forth. And I'm like, well, I've had one wife say, well, you won't do it. We're not going to be intimate. I go, well, there's an in between. Let's maybe do some peroxide or do this, and or we can do some biocide and liposomal and do some oil pulling. So there's some ways we can mitigate that, prevent that transfer, even if all people involved aren't fully compliant.
Yeah, and it could be non-intimate contact too. I've told the story of my
Yep.
oldest daughter when she was 2. Daddy, my belly hurts, and we ran a
Hmm.
GI map on her, and she had H. pylori at age 2. Did I pass it to her by the water bottle? Hey, I'm thirsty.
Yeah. Or
Okay,
just
crap. Where's your water
yeah.
bottle? So who knows, right? We fixed it. I mean, she's better
Yeah.
now, but this
Yeah.
stuff can happen young. So if you're
Correct.
if you have a young child, 1, 2, 3, I see tons of kids, young kids, 6 years and younger. A lot of them, they already have gut dysbiosis. And some of this is due to the mom, and some of it is placental transfer of toxins. So I had a baby this week who did a myco panel, and man, very high mold levels in a baby who is less than 2 years old. It's like, holy
Right.
crap. They had some mold exposure in early, like, first 6 months of the baby's life, then they moved, but I didn't think those levels matched the level of exposure. So we can only assume, and there's literature on this, but we can only assume it was through breast milk. So ladies, yes, breast milk is amazing. The unfortunate reality is if you have toxins in you though and you didn't detox preconception, there's likely some transfer of not only just mycotoxins, but other things to the baby. So if your baby has histamine issues, meaning rashes, diaper rash, or
Yep.
eczema, a lot of skin sensitivity, food sensitivities, as your baby's turning into a toddler, let's do the oat. Let's do the GI. There's pediatric
Correct.
collection bags we can do for kids. You basically tape the bag to the inside of the diaper, pull up, whatever, and we can collect urine from the kids. Or, if you could potty train them, that's great. And we can look at kids too. So don't think, oh, my kid just needs to go to the pediatrician. The pediatrician's not going to test for this stuff.
Correct. Yep. Nope. 100%. And again, with eczema can be a big one with different atopic dermatitis and different eczemas, right? So lots of parents I see with kids that have eczema, and the dietary strategies that you may need in the beginning tend to have to be stricter, and they don't have to be things that are made in perpetuity. So the initial diet we may recommend with someone that has lots of eczema symptoms or lots of histamine symptoms, which could include eczema. It could just be your urticaria, your hives/wheals. It could just be the weird migraines, the brain fog, the itchiness, right? The fatigue. It could be any of those things, right? But that diet that we recommend in the beginning may not have to be as strict as we do a reintroduction over time. And some of the topical things for the skin can be important because when you have that histamine issue on the skin, it's easy to scratch. When you scratch, you're going to impact the bilayer, and then you need things to actually bring back moisture to that skin. And sometimes we need some topical routines to kind of help promote healing, and then we can get less strict and less diligent over time. But in the beginning, we really have to get a lot of momentum to promote healing. And histamine may not be a root cause, it may be an artifact of something else going on. So we're making this video because people think histamine is the root issue, which it can be, but it also can be an artifact of other stuff with the environment, with the gut, with the diet. And that's really the cause, and this is the effect. And so when we look at effects, we're always going upstream to the cause. Patients think sometimes the effect is the cause, and it may not be. Just like people say, oh, I have leaky gut. Leaky gut's the cause. It's like, well, your gut's permeable because of the glyphosate, because of the food allergens, because of the infection, because of the low stomach acid. That's the cause. So we don't treat the leaky gut, we treat the cause. But then everything goes up to down. It goes from upstream to downstream, and then it starts to get better.
Yeah, well said. And I think the tide is turning where people are asking more root cause questions. But if you go to the health section at any bookstore, you're still going to see a lot of effects books, meaning
Yes.
histamine book, leaky gut book, brain fog book, fatigue book. And you're not going to see as many mold toxicity, glyphosate overload, dysbiosis
Yep.
books. And, who knows? I think it's going to evolve and change, and people are asking better questions. So the real takeaway is this: you got to get the data. Can you do low histamine? Sure. Put in evanbrand.com/histamine. It's a free guide. I've created it with my own personal experience. I looked at some nutritional therapy books too, but I found they're not always that accurate, especially when it comes to the
Hmm.
spices that aggravate histamine. So get the free guide, put it on your phone. There's no catch, and just look at it and refer to it. And I would advise you try it for a month and then let us know how we can help on the functional medicine side. Let's get these labs looked at. If you have Lyme, if you have Bartonella, if you've got mold, we've got to address that if we're going to get you fully better.
I agree. Guys, head over to evanbrand.com and reach out to Evan. Head over to justinhealth.com and reach out to Dr. J and myself. We see patients worldwide. There'll be links up there. You can click and schedule with us, and we'll be able to look at things and get you dialed in. I'll say one of the big things about me and Evan is we have dealt with mold issues in our environment, in our home. A lot of practitioners do not have experience dealing with mold. And when they do, it's very expensive. They don't understand practical, simple ways to get mold in their house under wraps. And some people, they may not be able to get mold under wraps because they're in an apartment where they can't fully deal with things. And there are still strategies, even with that, where you can still mitigate the load. I've had people in apartments with high level of mold. They can actually see the moist drywall, but we got things going and we were able to lower what was in the petri dish where it actually tested negative in the air, but we knew it was still there. But it's all about making sure it's not in the air. If it's behind a wall, but it's not in the air, you're not going to be able to sense it as much, right? And so there's strategies we can still do that can help and won't be as overwhelming.
Yeah, throw your
Anything
comments,
else?
questions in the chat. And then if you have other topics you want us to hit, just let us know. If you want us to go deeper into specific topics or symptoms, let us know. We're open to the feedback. So put it into the chat box if you're listening or watching on Dr. J's YouTube channel. If you're just listening on the audio, that's Justin Health on YouTube. That is where these videos are. If you're like, hey, I want to see the video, I'm listening to the audio only, go check out these. And we're live right now. So, I mean, this is unscripted stuff here. You'd be surprised how many people in the health space are using teleprompters, they're
That's it.
using scripts.
Most are.
Like,
Most are.
the viral content you see online are people that have scripted things. And I'm not opposed to that. I think it's cool, but we just want to show you that like our brains are actually firing on all cylinders right now. We are in the trenches in this stuff all day, every day clinically. We are going to dial this stuff in for you, and we're going to work as hard as we can to get you better.
Yeah, when you're doing this 40 hours a week with patients for over a decade, this is just old hat. We're just in it. And so it's like a language. Once you know the language, you don't have to pull out the language book. You just speak the language, right? And that's kind of where we're at. And that's what we bring to the table. And if you
Yep.
guys enjoy the content, put it down below in the comments. Love to see it. Share with family and friends. I think we put a lot of actionable information up, but I know it can be easy to get overwhelmed. So if you're overwhelmed, take all the free stuff. Take action, action, action. And then if you need more support, we're here for you for that next step. Anything else, Evan?
Awesome. No, man, let's wrap it up. We'll catch you guys soon.
All right, brother. You guys take care. Have an awesome weekend. Bye, y'all.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.